Can you imagine your church opening your mail and reading it? Or if you decide you want to leave that church, but you can't tell your friend or your family or anybody else in that church. Also, by the way, Tom Cruise wants to talk religion with his daughter, and we're going to talk about it. Aloha, everybody, and welcome. I'm Natalie, and this is Scientology Life After a Cult, where we get into all the culty Scientology news. And I talk about my 35 years in this cult and leaving with 3 generations of my family. Welcome, everybody, in the live chat. Big aloha to all of you. I'm so happy that you're here. Hello to the members. Thank you for being here, and thank you for your support. And huge mahalo to the moderators for helping us out today. We have all kinds of stuff to get into today. We're going to start with something a little bit lighter, a little bit funny, and then we're going to move into more serious stuff that will probably mortify you. But we will end on a happy note. So stay with me here. Let's all jump in the life after a cult canoe. Okay, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Let's do it. I can get started now because my body Thetan's here. Natalie's body Thetan. I'm glad you finally showed up. All right. So first off, anybody here follow Wonderhussy Adventures? She goes all around, I think a lot on the West Coast, and explores and share these videos. Well, she was on an adventure in Hollywood, and lo and behold, she found herself near a place that is very familiar to us. And I love that she calls it out, points it out, shouts it out with the weirdness that it deserves. Take a look at this.
And they call it a hillbilly Bloody Mary because it's got a Slim Jim in it. Just what you want after a punishing hike. How's that Guinness, Mikey?
Oh, it is awesome.
Okay, and as awesome as these drinks are, that's not even the best place about where we're having lunch. We're having lunch directly across from the Scientology Center. Dun, dun, dun! Cheers! And
oh, I just love that. Just right there at the end, just slipping it in. And it is a beautiful thing when Scientology centers, Scientology locations just get called out as the oddities that they are. It's such a weird thing for so many people who are learning that Scientology is a human trafficking cult. And I love that they call it out. Now let's take a look at, we looked, what was it? Was it earlier this week or last week? I don't even remember. We looked at a video where No Nora was protesting outside Portland Scientology with Liz Gale. And it was the funniest thing I'd seen in a long time. And it made me so happy to know they talked about creating content together. And I saw a short that literally almost made me fall off my bed. I was sitting on the edge and I just started cracking up. And this is from Liz Gale's channel. Take a look at this. I'm pretty sure that's Nora in the stall. It's really short, so focus and pay attention with me here. Check this out.
Can I have some toilet paper? Can I have some?
And if you can't see it, that was a Dianetics book and a page right out of that. Yeah, absolutely. Liz was hilarious. She's so funny. And No Nora, too, is so funny. I just love it. Oh, I love it so much. We're going to take a look at a clip from another one of Nora's video coming up. But first, let's take a look at an interview that Jon Atack, he wrote A Piece of Blue Sky. He is a cult expert, talks about, they talk about overcoming manipulation from destructive cults, and specifically, of course, in this situation, Scientology. And I love to see these Jon Atack interviews. I mean, let's be real. I like seeing interviews with pretty much any cult expert because it helps me. It helps me understand kind of what happened to myself and my family over 3 generations and 35 years. I find that to be really, 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 really helpful. So let's take a look at this.
The idea that there's somebody writing down the karma of all of these things and making sure that it all, or that the right moment arrives for 417 people to die in an air crash, the mathematics just becomes impossible. But it's a great way of controlling people, saying everything that happens to you is your fault, and it's because you've been bad that bad things happen. And it's so much a part of our culture since Christian Science, which is where Hubbard got it from, and it becomes the secret, the law of attraction. They're all prosperity Christianity, this idea that you can somehow control reality from this little node of being. If there are 8 billion of us just as humans doing that, let alone the other species, it all becomes so incredibly complicated.
Yeah.
But
it's interesting because I do agree with him on if you watch the whole thing in context, he's talking about how in Scientology and often in other cults, you were blamed if something bad happens to you, it's because you're bad, right? And that is a common practice in Scientology. It's how many of us were trapped for so long. We grew up and were indoctrinated with that belief that it's always us. Of course, if anything bad happens to Scientology, it's not their fault. Funny how that works. It's not their fault. If something bad happens to Scientology, it's somehow the fault of a Scientologist or somebody exposing Scientology. It has nothing to do with the fact that Scientology takes abusive actions, which they then get exposed and criticized for. The harmful practice of disconnection. I don't know, maybe don't do that. I don't know, maybe don't follow people. I'm just saying, maybe then people won't come at you, Scientology. At the same time, I do believe, though, in the law of attraction. I think that, what we focus on, that's where we put our energy. So I pretty much agree with most of what he said, but that little part at the end, I think, I don't know about that part. But it is a good interview. He gives some great information and background about Scientology and all of the things in terms of processing it as a cult from the eyes of somebody who is now an expert on cults. All right, let's go take a look now at Declare Dave Loves Suppressive Sherry, because he did a video, speaking of cults, getting into EST, landmark, brainwashing. Some of you may know, but EST was started by somebody who started in Scientology. It's almost like the 6 degrees of separation of cults. How many cults can be traced back to Scientology? We know we have EST, which then became eventually, right, Landform. And then we've got, NXIVM. Keith Raniere had dabbled in Scientology, went on to be his culty self and do all of that. I find this absolutely fascinating. Let's take a look at a clip from the video that Declare Dave Loves Suppressive Sherry did on this topic. Link down below to this and all of the articles and videos that we're going to be looking at, so you can take a look at them in their whole, because we just look at a little recap, a little snippet, a little taste.
So EST was a 2-weekend thing. Okay. So I guess it was a Saturday, Sunday. You started at 9 a.m. and it went all the way till midnight. Okay. And there were some crazy rules in there. For instance, you are not allowed to speak unless you were spoken to or asked a question. So there's just no jumping up and having conversations. You could not wear a watch. So you couldn't know what time it was.
Even in Scientology, you can wear a watch and know what time it is. You have to, on account of the multiple roll calls you have to be at each day.
You are not allowed to talk to your neighbors in the seminar.
In Scientology, in the course room, you actually are not allowed to talk to people in the course room about anything other than course. Or if you're doing a drill, you can't walk over and go like, hey, what are you doing? How was your weekend? In the middle of the course time. Once course starts, you can do that in between. So I find that interesting as a similarity.
Seminars were held in schwanky ballrooms and hotels.
Scientology now has their ideal organizations that they consider to be swanky, but for the most part, most of the Scientology organizations were fairly run down, but now there are a whole bunch of these ideal organizations where they're trying to create that swanky atmosphere to get people to join Scientology and be culty with.
And it was very much, from what I understand, a more upscale kind of event.
So interesting. Check out the whole video, you guys. Just so much information in there, and I love it. Also, Declare Dave. He goes by Declare Dave now. Nancy just let me know. I'm so happy because it's always a mouthful to say Declare Dave Loves Suppressive Sherry. So now it's just Declare Dave. I appreciate that. I love it so much. Hey, Rika, good to see you. I enjoy Dave's videos very much. Hello, Natalie Maz in chats. Good to see you, girl. Okay, where are we at now? Let's go over and look at Jenna Miscavige. We're going to look at a clip from a video that she did. Can you imagine, say you're, I don't know, at camp, which is nothing like, it's not, you know what, that's not a great example. But my point is, if you were at camp away from your parents for say like 3 weeks and you wanted to write them letters and they wrote you, and the campground opened all the letters and read them and screened your communication to your parents to make sure you weren't saying anything out of pocket, that you weren't saying that you weren't doing well. Or imagine even if you're at a boarding school and that happens in any scenario. There's not a scenario I can come up with that would justify that. But this is what happened to children in the Sea Organization. And Jenna Miscavige not only shares what happens, she actually saved some of the envelopes of communication between her and her parents and other people. And she shows us how that happened, how they open it and read it. But first, let me thank ex-witness Vernon for being a member of the channel. Hip, hip, hooray. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. All right, let's go over now and look at Jenna Miscavige's video. Link down below to the whole thing because it really is this is a really informative video.
The teacher would look at them and would basically send them to our parents. Now, we knew that the teacher could see these letters, and so it's not like we would write anything that was worrying us or that we were upset about. In fact, all letters from the mail pack were read. I have some examples here.
And the mail pack in Scientology, at each Scientology organization, they just put all this basically mail printed paper. I don't know. You know what? You would think in this digital age, they would do more digitally, but they're still doing these mail packs. And this pack would go back and forth from where the parents were at the confidential Scientology base that only people who had Google Maps knew where it was. Everyday Scientologists did not. And that's how these letters went back and forth.
Here. So this is how things were routed. This was from a friend that was in Clearwater. And you can see I opened it here, but this has been previously opened and taped. So everything was open and read.
To make sure that nobody was expressing any disagreement, that nobody was expressing a desire to leave. It would not be okay to let your parents know, hey, I really miss you and I'm unhappy and this happened and that happened. That communication would be stopped and you would be made to correct that.
To make sure that nobody was saying bad things about Scientology or the Sea Org. This is another example of a letter that was written to me. And you can see right here, it's been opened, and here's a staple.
It's so disgusting, but very informative. If you did not catch that video, link down below. It is definitely worth watching the whole thing because there's a lot of information to fill in maybe some of the blanks and help with the understanding of the level of control in Scientology, even when it comes to communication between children and their own parents or their friends who might be in other places. That's right, Andrea. Scientology is next level nosy. Doesn't go the other way, though. You know what I'm saying? You can be walking up and going, hey, show me your orders from David Miscavige. I'd like to go through your emails, Scientology. Now, let's see here. Hold on a second. I have another clip, I think from the same video. Let's take a look at this.
My point is that there was never allowed to be open communication between us and our parents. There were almost never phone calls, so there was no way for us to say, this isn't right, or I don't like this about it, or I'm having a hard time with this schooling, or even like, just for instance, if you got sick and like that wasn't something that our parents were told about. It wasn't something that we were taken to the doctor for. I never once went to the doctor when I was at the ranch, with one exception, which is when I was supposed to do Scientology's purification rundown. And I just got a physical. That was the only time I ever went to the doctor from the ages of 6 until 12 years old. My point is that there was never allowed to be open communication
I'm just still processing the part about not seeing a doctor. But I realized that even I grew up in Scientology, but not in the Sea organization. And I had a similar experience. We rarely went to the doctor. There was definitely, I remember as a child feeling in part that it was because of a concern that as children, we could end up in the hands of the psychiatrist. I do remember going, I mean, having to be really, really, really sick. And there wasn't a lot of times though where, I mean, definitely where that was done. And I can't even imagine being a child in the Sea organization and having even less access to that. It just blows my mind. I know I keep saying, like, after 35 years in Scientology, you wouldn't think that I would be, shocked by any of this, but to hear it and with the content, I'm also listening to Jenna's book right now. I read it years ago, but I'm listening to it on Audible and I'm over halfway through. So I've gotten through a lot of her experience on the ranch in the Sea organization. And it's just heart-wrenching what these kids went through and experienced. And at the same time, how many of them were able to seek out some type of normality in their childhood and try to still experience things as children and have those experiences. It's just heartbreaking. All right, let's go take a look now at this is a channel that's new to me, and I'm so glad that people sent me this. And I think it's pronounced Lisa Bilyeu. She had a cult expert on, Rick Ross, talking about the signs of a cult leader. This was fascinating to me. Absolutely fascinating. Let's see. We're going to look at a couple of clips here. Let's start with the whole start of the video.
The leader of a destructive cult is very similar to the abusive controlling partner. They're narcissistic, ego-driven, and lack empathy. Charlie Manson, he was just a master manipulator. Keith Raniere, women were branded using a cauterizing iron. Jim Jones put cyanide in fruit punch and almost 1,000 people died. We should not shame the victim. We should look at the perpetrator, the predator, who has deliberately, knowingly, methodically preyed upon someone. Don't think that because of your level of intelligence that somehow you're immune, because if you think that, you're ripe for the picking. The leader of a
Ooh. Oh, that's so good. Okay, but let's look at this other clip. Let's see here. This, I was like, oh my goodness. I watched this video and this interview and my hands and feet were like massively sweating. There's so much information here that I know as somebody who's a cult survivor myself, really helped me to kind of look at a couple things that I had questions on to help understand my experience or to understand the mindset of even my mom. My mom passed away 2 years after we left Scientology. And so I had just those 2 years with her outside of Scientology and the rest of my life from the age of 5 in Scientology. And I have so many questions that I would ask her today after being out of Scientology for 14 years that I didn't ask then because it just didn't occur to me. I hadn't gotten far enough in being able to process what had happened to me and our family to be able to ask those questions. So I really appreciate when channels have these experts on. I would love to have them on.
Danny Masterson.
This is where the part in the video where they get into the Scientology piece.
And Danny Masterson was an actor in that 70s show, which was a popular sitcom some years ago. And he recently was convicted of rape and he's now in prison. And he was a member of Scientology. He was more or less raised in Scientology. And he raped and abused women who were also Scientologists. And they felt that they could not come forward or criticize what was going on, largely because of the training that they received in Scientology.
And I want to be very specific about this. Of course, they felt that way because it's the policy of Scientology. It is the rules set by L. Ron Hubbard that it is a suppressive act to report a Scientologist to the authorities. You have to take it to Scientology and handle it internally. It's not just how they felt. I just kind of wanted to really make that point, because it's one thing to be like, oh, well, I just felt like I couldn't. No, you couldn't. It was against the rules. If you did, you were considered a suppressive person. You could be kicked out of Scientology, lose contact with your friends, your family, et cetera, et cetera. It is the actual rules and policies of Scientology that make it this way. All right, let's finish watching this.
They didn't want to be considered SPs or suppressive persons because they had friends in Scientology, they had family in Scientology, and they might go through disconnection. So that became an impediment for them to tell the truth about what happened to them. And years later, they would eventually come forward. Danny Masterson would go through his trial here in Los Angeles, and then he would be eventually convicted at the second trial.
Just fascinating interview. Absolutely fascinating. Susan asked, but did letting Scientology handle issues stop the law-breaking actions of the members? It depends on the situation. Here's how kind of it, from my experience, like what I witnessed myself, it would be, oh, it's being handled internally. You never really knew for sure because you weren't allowed to discuss it. That's kind of basically the thing. You weren't allowed to talk about it. So you really didn't know. In Scientology, Scientologists are used to people coming and going. They're there one day, they're not there the next day. In the Sea organizations, a person would be on the job and then they weren't there. We were very indoctrinated to not ask. It was kind of a don't ask, don't tell when people would disappear. You don't know if they left, if they blew, if they were transferred someplace else. It was not a part of the culture to question these things, especially in the Sea organization, for sure. Okay, now let's take a look at Oh No Nora. Oh No Nora talks about the policy in Scientology on leaving Scientology. Because let's say you're a Scientologist and you decide, you know what? Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I'll use myself as an example. When I really hit that moment where I was willing to, if it meant losing my family, except for my children, that I was willing to do that if it meant I could leave Scientology. Fortunately, I had a 2-year plan. I left with 3 generations of my family. Not all of my family. I have extended family who disconnected. Pretty much all of my friends in Scientology disconnected, except for a few who themselves also left. And and actually later on, even some of the friends in Scientology left and have since reconnected, which is always a beautiful thing. But imagine you can't communicate that. You can't talk to people, your own family, about your doubts or your concerns or questions about L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology. I was probably reading things on the internet about people who had turned whistleblower, who had left Scientology, oh gosh, for 1.5 years, like 2 years before I even told my husband at the time, because I wasn't sure where he stood on things. So it is a policy in Scientology that you are not allowed to express that you want to leave. And if you do, again, oh, suppressive person, you're a suppressive person. And that's basically what the reality of what it is like for Scientology. But the interesting thing here is Oh No Nora goes over that specific policy by L. Ron Hubbard. You guys got to listen to this. It's going to blow your mind.
If one is going to leave an org, the proper action is to report it only to the Hubbard area secretary and staff chaplain and not to fellow staff members. Where a person is secretly planning to leave and making private preparations to do so without informing the proper terminals in an org and does leave below and does not return within a reasonable length of time.
And to blow in Scientology is to leave or depart without authorization. And I got to tell you guys, I had an epiphany about this. To blow, to leave without authorization, to leave without okay, to just take off for the day, even in the Sea organization. To take off. When I was in the Sea Org and I was in Los Angeles, And I was already living out in Seattle, which is where they sent my husband in the time and myself, because we refused to end my pregnancy. We wanted to have my daughter. So as punishment, we were sent to Seattle as Sea Org members to work for Scientology in Seattle. And at no point even can you really communicate about that. Like, hey, we're moving to Seattle. Like, they don't want Sea Org members talking to Sea Org members about what they're doing. And the idea that you need permission and authorization to leave, it's just really hitting me more even now, I think, on how insane that is. But it was accepted. It was very much within my reality that if I was going to leave without permission, that I was going to get in trouble. And I did. I was staying at the Manor Hotel while I was in Los Angeles. My mom had a bunch of money on account at the Manor Hotel, which is at Celebrity Center. So that's where I stayed while I was back in Los Angeles, communicating that I wanted to leave. And I basically got frustrated with them taking too long to handle me or do anything. So I'm like, I'm going home. I need to be with my children. And so I was going to leave. And I had scheduled a cab. This was way back before Uber and all of those things. Again, the Manor Hotel was run by Scientology. Who shows up at my door? The Continental Justice Chief for the Western United States, which is basically the person in charge of handling the suppressive people, the people declared suppressive by Scientology. When you leave Scientology or you're declared a suppressive person, you're told your only terminal is the Continental Justice Chief. He and a security guard came to my room at the Manor Hotel and said, you can't leave. We know that you have a flight and you're leaving tomorrow. I didn't tell them. I was just going to go. And you know what they did? The Manor Hotel had a bus or a van that would take guests to and from the airport. And I had scheduled it for the morning to take me to the airport. They canceled it. They canceled my ride to the airport and let me know that I would be declared suppressive if I chose to leave, AKA blow. I left anyways. I did not get declared at that time. It was actually quite a bit of time before that happened. And it's crazy. You can't take, well, here, Nora says it well. You can't talk about ever going anywhere, even taking a day off. It would create ideas like others should do that too. You would get in trouble in the Sea organization if you manage to secure a day off, right? If you manage to get all of the Scientology higher ups to sign off on that, and your statistics are up enough, and you are deemed worthy, or at least trustworthy enough to have a day off and leave the base, you can't have a great time and come back and tell a whole ton of people about your great time, because that's other fish to fry. You're moving attention from Scientology onto having fun and doing other things, which you can't do in the Sea organization. It's next level crazy.
An automatic declare is to be issued. Should any monies or organizational property found to be missing in consequence, action is taken on criminal charges.
Because of course, there's the assumption. Here's the thing. L. Ron Hubbard says over and over and over again that if somebody wants to leave Scientology, it's because they have crimes. If somebody is critical of Scientology, it's because they have crimes. So there is an automatic assumption by Scientology and, of course, the Office of Special Affairs that you are a criminal. So that is the narrative that Scientology will put out about you when you leave Scientology. And even right there, what Nora read it's just the assumption that you probably committed some financial irregularities, as they refer to it in Scientology, and you're going to be prosecuted and in trouble for that. But it is an assumption. It's never, well, what's going on that you feel this way? You know, what's happening? Did something happen? Can we talk about it? No, it's, oh, you want to leave Scientology? Oh, you need some interrogations. Yeah, you do. No, you're a criminal. You're a criminal committing financial irregularities. I find it very interesting that one of the most popular criticisms that Scientology will spread rumors about, whether it's ex-Scientologists or someone never in Scientology who is choosing to expose Scientology, is that they have financial irregularities. It is their literal go-to. And here's the irony. Scientology themselves, I mean, it's like they forgot about the chase wave, like they forgot about all of the credit cards they charged up without authorization. It's like Scientology forgot about the fact that everyday public in Scientology, their members, that Scientology registrars, their job was to collect money, would find out your credit card information, pretend to be you, call your credit card company and try to get your limits raised or find out what your limits were. Completely invasive and illegal. And these are the people going around spreading rumors about, well, critics of Scientology have crimes, and the assumption that if you leave the Sea Org or Scientology, it's because you've also created some financial irregularities, while they're full blown down that rabbit hole themselves. It is absolutely insane. Insane. And I love that she calls it out there. Let's go take a look now. You guys know Kelly. Kelly protests at Big Blue and some other places as well. She created, this is a great thing. If you go, I linked this down below. She created a court calendar and other important event dates. She says she'll add details and more events dates as best she's able as soon as she has the info. So there can be more of a location if you want to track or support anyone dealing with court cases, that you can see when they are and all of that. I love that she did this. Link down below to the calendar so you can check it out for yourselves as well. Now let's go over and take a look at Windy City Thetan Watch, who sat down with Mona, Fat Grammy, and did an update on Nance Drew's case. In fact, I thought I saw Nance Drew in the chat go flying by earlier. Let's take a look at this update here and see what's happening.
Don't think that money is the only way that helps in this scenario, right? She's going to be crushed for time in order to be able to put up a stiff defense about what's coming against her, right? And what are some of the other ways that we might be able to help?
Well, we were somebody had asked me about first of all, on a civil defense, that pro se, which means you go and represent yourself, would be probably fine in this situation. But if you're having to go against a criminal defense, state attorney, that if nothing else, at least for this next discovery, ask coming up on Monday, and this is just an option. It's something that Nancy needs to think about, of asking for a public defender.
Check out the whole video. They get into a lot on it. And this has to do with, if you guys remember, what we refer to as Boobgate, when Nance Drew was outside live streaming and protesting Scientology in Chicago, and Chadwick, a Scientology staff member, came out. Nance was in front of him, and allegedly her boob made contact with him, and he lost his mind. And this apparently was just such an assault on him for him that this whole ridiculousness in court is going on. And check it out, because there's other players in this in Chicago Scientology. And I've been saying this since Scientology opened in Chicago, their new building in March, that there's something extra shady about Scientology Chicago. And I'm glad that so much of this is being called out and still being looked at. And they get into some of that in Windy City Thetan Watch's video. And you can go to Nance Drew as well and find her YouTube channel here. And hopefully Nance will be able to, depending on how things turn out, I know eventually she'll get there where she can speak on this, but I do believe that she still cannot. But any way that we can support her, it's ridiculous what they're doing. It's so ridiculous. But this is what Scientology does, is they don't do this to win, by the way. Scientology does not end up in court with people who are protesting Scientology. Their goal is not to win the case necessarily. That would just be gravy. Their goal is to tie up resources, financial resources, time, to stress out that person so much that they quit, or to make it seem as if it's impossible to stand up to Scientology for those reasons. And this is why it's really important too, that when you are going out to live stream or protest Scientology, be aware of what the rules and the laws are in your area, because Scientology will go out of their way to try and trap you and create a false situation where they make it seem as if you are the aggressor and they are the victim, or that individual is. We've seen this happen over and over and over again. And this is what happened with Nance. And it's something to just really be aware of. Leave space. We see this with Windy City Thetan Watch. When a Scientologist starts getting aggressive with him, he backs it up. And we've seen other protesters and live streamers doing this as well, because there have been so many cases where Scientology has been trying to paint the protester as the person in the wrong, when really they're just trying to set up a situation to get them into court and then get them all tied up in that. And none of them deserve that. And that goes with Nance as well. So sending you hugs, girl, sending you hugs. Keep being strong there. Now let's go take a look at Austin, where Miss Kim is. Miss Kim is out there protesting in Austin. We see Hitzel out there as well. And she shared why she protests with somebody who walked up and wanted to know why she was there. And I just love it. This happens.
Because they, what brought me is a cult doesn't let their members leave. And they've had survivors. They have their own channels on YouTube now telling how they had to escape. And we have like 200. Miss Kim SP is me. Growing up in Scientology is a good one. He's the one I found about 2 years ago. Anyway, that and the child abuse, because they believe they've lived multiple lives. They treat their children like adults, because last life they could have been an 80-year-old man.
That's right. They are big beings in little bodies. Every time I hear that, even though it's something I grew up hearing for a long time, it took me a long time to process that one too, because it was something we were led to believe and indoctrinated to believe, that it wasn't a good thing to be a child, that you needed to be more adult-like, you need to be responsible, you need to take on roles that an adult would be able to handle or find their way around. I have a great example for you about that. My sister Lana, who many of you have met, she was in the Sea Organization. She was trafficked into the Sea Organization at the age of 14. And as part of her time in the Sea Organization, this is one of those stories where my sister and I, we've been doing these sister sleepovers. She comes over to my house and we spend time together. And often we end up talking about these things we have never talked about since we left Scientology. And she herself too, she's gone through a lot of healing, a lot of therapy, a lot of finding ways to cope and deal and process, like many of us have that experience in Scientology. When she was a teenager, I think she was about 17 years old, she was sent to Miami by Scientology in the Sea Org to recruit people for the Sea Org. She did get one person recruited into the Sea Org, and they paid for him to fly from Miami back to Los Angeles. They told Lana at 17 in Miami, "We don't have the money to fly you back." They left her there. One night she stayed with a Scientologist. The next night she spent in a park in Miami at 17, left there by the Sea Organization. She's a big being, right? Just because she's 17, underage, had been in the Sea Org for the last 3 years. So minimal contact with the outside world, right? That she's 17. She didn't have a credit card, nothing like that, where she could get a place to stay. They did nothing to help her either. This is what ends up happening. And that point of view that, well, you're a big being, you're a Sea Org member, that you have to do any job that we give you. But they don't prepare, or especially people who grow up in the Sea Organization that don't have that exposure to the outside world as well, even know about those things. Lana didn't have a driver's license, none of that. This is something I just found out the other day that she shared with me. And when Lana comes, we get together again, we're going to try to do a video where she can share more about this experience and other experience that she experienced in the Sea Org as well. Yeah, right? Thank goodness nothing happened to her. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I just could not believe it. I cannot. It just blew my mind. And each time she tells me one of these things, I think she's starting to write them down now, because it's a lot of it, I think, is starting to come to the forefront for her. The more that we talk about these things, you start remembering other experiences, and she's writing them down so that she can share it with us. Let's see here. Let me catch up a little bit on the comments. There is a question about how people can support literally Michael. I just found out the other day that he still had a legal case with Scientology. I don't know. There's a question, is there a GoFundMe? If somebody knows how to support him, definitely let us know in the chat. Or if you're catching this on the replay, put it in the comments, because I don't have an answer to that question. I'm not sure exactly what's needed, but maybe somebody knows and they can share that information with us. All right, now let's go over to Florida, to Clearwater, where Dusty was there with Farrell Sherrill, Dusty soda dispenser in front of Flag. And it also was his birthday, by the way. I don't know if you guys know. So happy birthday again to Dusty. But I love that Farrell Sherrill and Dusty have been teaming up outside Clearwater with his electric sign and all that, just catching Scientology being culty.
Got the wave, got the wave.
And getting so much, support by the people who drive by, whether they're waving or whether they're honking. And the beautiful thing about this is right out front of Flag. This is where Scientologists consider the Flag land base to be the ultimate in Scientology technology, that you can go there and anything can be fixed, that anything could be handled. And I love that they're sitting right out there, basically in Scientology's face, and as people go by, showing their support for them. It's so fantastic. So happy birthday, Dusty. Great to see you there. Now let's talk about yesterday. I sat down with Aaron at Growing Up in Scientology, and we did a video where we talked about a ton of stuff. But one of the things we got into was the issue with not addressing mental health in Scientology and questions around there. This is all coming up again and will come out more because Lisa Marie Presley has a memoir that is coming out on October 8th. And the memoir is something she started prior to her passing. And it said that she did multiple videos talking about sharing her story so that this memoir could be written. And her daughter, Riley Keough, finished it. And there's a lot of question around, okay, how, where, and what? Like, what happened? What happened with that family in regard to Scientology? And many of us are wondering if that's going to be addressed or not in the book. But the issue of not being able to lean into or explore mental health treatment and the devastating consequences for many Scientologists is kind of what we were talking about, specifically with Lisa Marie Presley's son. When it came to mental health treatment, what signs were missed? When you're a Scientology family, especially a multi-generational one, as you know, it's like we don't address mental health. It's just not addressed. You're just told you just need to do your next step. Just keep smiling. Don't behave in a way that is unbecoming of an operating Thetan. Stop doing your strip fitness, Natalie. I mean, all the things. I am obviously still butthurt that I got in trouble for that in Scientology because I feel like I'm constantly bringing it up. The level of control.
If I was in Riley's shoes, I can't even imagine what the loss of her brother Ben meant to her.
Yeah.
And whether, like, if I'm trying to put myself in her shoes and having been born and raised in Scientology and being aware of whether Ben was ever prevented or told there's not anything wrong with you. Like, I mean, obviously he struggled.
What was she denied when it came to, and if you don't know, Lisa Marie Presley's son, Ben, unalived himself tragically as a young man. That family has seen a lot of loss, and I'm really interested to see what comes out with this memoir. My hope is that they do get into the Scientology part of it, because it was part of Lisa. It was a big part of Lisa Marie Presley's life, and she was helping behind the scenes people leaving Scientology. And I just really hope that that is a part of it. I think it's important because it's so much a part of her story. I pre-ordered my book already, so I guess we have to wait and see, unless some things get leaked maybe closer to. I hope that that happens so we can find out. All right, let's jump into a little bit of, did you guys see Gene Simmons' response about Emily Armstrong, Linkin Park, and Scientology? KISS frontman Gene Simmons. He weighs in on Linkin Park's new singer and the Scientology controversy. In rock and roll, there are no rules. Life is short. Go out there and live it up. Enjoy it. Yeah, life is short. You should get out there and you should enjoy it. So let's scroll down. I'm not going to read the whole thing here. I just want to get into Meanwhile, Simmons was also asked about the Scientology controversy surrounding Linkin Park's decision to make Armstrong their new lead vocalist due to her alleged ties with the Church of Scientology and previous support of former actor and convicted artist Danny Masterson. The singer has since issued a statement addressing her support. There's been further controversy and debate surrounding Linkin Park's decision. When asked for his thoughts on the Scientology controversy, Simmons responded, "I know all about Scientology. I studied author and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard, the thetans and the energy left over when the universe was created, and that we all have theta within us. I get it. I understand and have read deeply into that. I'm not a follower, but good luck. Life is short. Believe what you want. Worship a rock or an alien, whatever floats your boat." He continued, "The great silent majority, I don't mean politically, the people who make things happen buy tickets. So if they, and they will, sell lots of tickets, Linkin Park and the public has spoken, end of story, and they will do great." Okay, so is anybody just a bit irritated at his response here? I know all about Scientology. No, Gene Simmons. If you know all about Scientology, you would know that Scientology is a human trafficking cult created by a man who was once in a sex cult doing black magic with Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons. And right after that, he came up with Dianetics. Then he realized one day, you know what? If I really want to make a lot of money, I should start a religion. And he did. He started a religion that was controlling, that held people against their will, that broke up families, that still today has a harmful disconnection policy that they practice all the time. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. So no, Gene Simmons, you do not know all about Scientology, but I would really love it if you did find out more about Scientology and the truth of it before you go running your mouth like that, saying, you know, all about Scientology and making it sound like it's just this thing. It's just another religion. And, you know, you do you. No, you don't get to do you when it involves harming children and adults for decades. That is not doing you and just believing what you want to believe. Yes, I agree. You can believe in rocks, you can believe in aliens, whatever you want. But when you cross that line into physical, mental, and spiritual abuse on other people, destroying families, separating children from their parents, parents from their children, no, that's not just let people believe what they want to believe. It's very different. So I am disappointed in you, Gene Simmons. And I'm sure he's going to care. He's not going to care, but I just feel that it needs to be said. You guys tell me what you think about that. Tell me in the chat if you're catching this on the replay. You know, am I out of pocket here? What are you thinking? Sparknail, I hope Gene is ready for his backlash. Does it matter to you? Not to me. I was thinking the same thing. On Hada on Fire, Simmons has been a dude, bro, douche canoe for a long time. I don't think I've heard that before. Dude, bro, douche canoe. Florence says, Gene Simmons is a trash human. I honestly don't know hardly anything about him beyond he was the lead singer of Kiss. So yeah, I'm like, Joe says he just sees famous people living their life thinking it's just a stupid religion. It's not, Gene. It really isn't. Exactly. And, you know, obviously he doesn't know, but I just feel like there's enough out there in the news, all over the internet, everywhere else, where you might get an inkling that Scientology is up to something beyond just, these are what our beliefs are, and you do you. No, 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 no. Not true at all. Tamara, I agree. Simmons just doesn't care what people think. Yeah, I totally get it. Susan says Gene Simmons is saying so what? She's a Scientologist. She has talent. And that's more important to her, trying to impose her beliefs on people she comes in contact with. Yeah, exactly. We had a whole conversation with this yesterday on that video I linked down below with Aaron. If you guys haven't seen that, check it out. Check it out and tell me what you think about it. In the meantime, we were going to hop over and talk about how this is interesting. Shiloh Jolie and Suri Noel. Shiloh Jolie and Suri Noel's lives at age 18 compared from dropping their famous dads, Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise's names, to future plans. So we know, we've talked about this on the channel Suri Cruise, she's been dropping the cruise and going by Suri Noel. Shiloh Jolie changed her name from Shiloh Jolie Pitt to Shiloh Jolie. And they're both 18 and they're both kind of going through something a little similar. And I thought this was interesting because I don't know, Shiloh Jolie is really just not necessarily on my radar, but I read this and I thought, this is making some really good points, actually. Two of showbiz's most famous teens are growing up fast. Born in 2006, when tabloid media was at its peak and celebrity privacy was practically non-existent, Shiloh Jolie Pitt, born to Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt, and Suri Cruise, daughter of Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes, were household names almost as soon as they were born. That is true. While both celeb offspring were thrust into the spotlight from the moment they entered the world, Shiloh, born May 27th, and Suri, born April 18th, have largely grown up away from the spotlight. And while their lives have turned out to be quite different, they do share some similarities. Now that they're both 18, here's what they've been up to and why they're both changing their names. They're both estranged from their mega star fathers. And we know what's up with Tom Cruise, and it goes in to talk more about Brad Pitt's situation. Their fathers might be two of the most famous actors in the world, but that hasn't helped them establish good relationships with their respective daughters. And then it kind of goes into timelines and whatnot as well. And it's always interesting to me that it's like, for a religion, for Tom Cruise to go around talking about the powerful ways that Scientology improves people's lives, right? It's creating a better world. Scientology themselves, their creed is that they're going to create a world without insanity, without criminality. I don't know how you can do that when you can't even keep families together in your own organization, and you actually encourage the breaking apart of families if those family members are not down with what you're doing in Scientology. Interesting, though, that they're being tied together in that way. And I thought that was interesting. I also thought it was interesting that Tom Cruise has a long-term plan to reunite with his daughter, Suri Cruise. He wants to connect as adults and talk religion. I know what you're thinking. Well, maybe I don't. Let's talk about this. I was like, what? If this is true, a second chance at happiness? I don't know. Tom Cruise ended his marriage with Katie Holmes in 2012. Since that time, his relationship with their daughter, Suri Cruise, has been a hot topic of conversation. The Top Gun star has reportedly not seen his now 18-year-old daughter in over a decade. However, he is paying for her to go to college at the prestigious Carnegie Mellon University in Pennsylvania. Meanwhile, he could have ulterior motives for forking over the cash for her tuition. According to the September 23rd edition of Heat World, Tom Cruise is hoping to reconcile with Suri Cruise, although things look bleak as Suri recently stopped using her famous father's last name and is now going by Suri Noel, which is her mother Katie Holmes' middle name. So that he wants to get together with his daughter and talk religion. I don't know. I just don't know that I'm buying that. I mean, I could see maybe how he thinks that is something that he wants to do or that he should do. I don't know that, oh, when she's 18, then I can talk to her about Scientology and bring her into the fold. I don't know. Or I just want to be able to have conversations with her about a religion as an adult. I can say this. Now, I don't know about the mind of Tom Cruise and what he's thinking, but I can speak to it from the Scientology perspective. And as a Scientologist, when you have a family member that has left the fold or who never got into it in the first place and is critical of your involvement, L. Ron Hubbard says that when you properly label those people as potential trouble source or as suppressive people, that you're leaving the door open a crack for them to come to their senses and return and follow the rules of Scientology. And I could see from the Scientology perspective, they believe we are all immortal spirits. This is just one lifetime and that there's multiple lifetimes to be had. That's why the Sea Org, they commit to a 1 billion-year contract so you can come back lifetime after lifetime to do the work of L. Ron Hubbard. It just doesn't work like that. But the mentality, the mindset in Scientology is that you sacrifice this one lifetime with your child because of the greater good, because it's so important that Scientology is expanded, that it is more important than one lifetime with one child, because you are saving the planet for lifetime after lifetime after lifetime. So you see how that works? It is so ridiculous in that way, but I get how Tom Cruise might believe that there is an avenue or a scenario where he can have that kind of conversation with his daughter. And maybe he could, maybe at some point for closure, or maybe wanting to have a relationship with her dad out of curiosity, if nothing, I don't know. We'll have to see what happens as she goes through her life now as an adult. But I am pretty sure he is holding out hope that his influence as an adult, when she is no longer under the influences of her mother and her mother's family, that he can somehow bring her into the fold for Scientology. Let's see here. Amber says, I was the best at leaving without permission. So this is about leaving Scientology and how you can't tell people. I was always running away probably 3 times a week. You know, my sister too. In fact, my sister shared how she blew multiple times, sometimes just for the day, and would come back. And as long as she came back then, people would, I mean, that it just was kind of overlooked. She didn't get in trouble each time. I found that very interesting, because it's different today. I think they're a lot more strict about that. And it's probably easier to keep track and tabs of people because there's hardly anyone there. So it becomes even easier to do that. Now, as per usual, we have to bring in David Miscavige, leader of Scientology, and wake up our friends at the Office of Special Affairs, the dirty branch for Scientology, the people who are out there, Office of Special Affairs, doing their best to create all kinds of disruptions for anybody, any news outlet, any person speaking out against Scientology with their dirty tricks. And you know what? Office of Special Affairs, I just like to remind you that when you do decide to leave Scientology, that we are here and we will help you leave. But in the meantime, I hope that you're seeing all of the things and what people really think and see about Scientology. And your job is not supposed to be just like, oh, I'm going to find all the bad people who are talking crap about Scientology. What about the side where you're supposed to be like creating like genuinely good feelings about Scientology? Where's that work? Because your front groups are not cutting it. They are not. People are on to your front groups. They absolutely are. And they're not having it. Word is just coming out left and right about Scientology. Paralyzed, authoritarian nonsense. Tom Cruise is lost. Yeah, exactly. And really believing that you're being able to control that narrative and control that person. We can't. None of us can control what the other person is doing. All we control is ourselves and how we choose to show up and what we choose to do. And the beautiful thing about what's happening across different social media platforms in exposing Scientology is it is such an effort by people who were in Scientology like myself, and people never in Scientology like most of you, never in Scientology, but all in on bringing down this cult. And they've never had a time, I don't think there's ever really been a time in the history of Scientology and exposing Scientology where there were so many people willing to support people who were victims of Scientology, who grew up in Scientology or were there as an adult, who had to escape, leave, who were harassed, who were physically tortured, many of them in the Sea Organization. It's very different today because there are so many people never in Scientology who are there, who are talking about this, who are sharing your own experiences in your own high control groups as well. And they don't like that. What Scientology is most afraid of is community. Anytime we start making friends and creating community and trying to help each other and going and discussing our experiences in Scientology from our own point of view and our own experiences, even if they're different. When we have a community where that is allowed, they can't stand it. They hate it because creating community creates strength. Having compassion for each other and trying to advocate for even people who have family members in who they still see as victims of Scientology because of the mind control and the brainwashing is all part of it. So I just hope you guys know what an important role you play and you have played in bringing down not just Scientology, but other cults. Because I think when we have these discussions about Scientology and why and how it's a cult, We actually are also educating overall on, hey, here's some red flags you should look at. Here's how these people got recruited into Scientology. So keep an eye out for that. Don't fall for that, because it might not be Scientology. It could be something else. It could be some other high control group. Now, make sure you guys head over and you show aloha to that like button. I want to take you over to Z News, who right now, Dinu is live outside of Scientology in Kansas City, doing some chalk tech there, exposing Scientology abuses. Visit SPTV.SPACE. Scientology covers up crimes, child abuse, elder abuse. I can't see that last part there, but something fraud. And I think she's out there with auditing Scientology Kansas City, so you can see them both. But I would love it if we could do a room raid and everybody heads over to Z News. Nancy's going to share a link in the chat. And you can also, hold on a second here. I'm also going to grab a link here too. You know, there's the, Nancy just put the link in the chat for it. Go over, show her some aloha, her and auditing Scientology. I would love that. They're doing a great job protesting and exposing Scientology out there in Kansas City. I went out there a couple weeks ago and really enjoyed my time with them and finding out why and how they got involved with exposing Scientology. I appreciate it so much that they're doing that. So please head over, room raid. Let's do an aloha room raid. Show them lots of love. And later today, you guys, today is Thursday, right? Yes. 5 o'clock Central, I am going to be sitting down and doing another live stream with Relatable Reese. That's at 5 p.m. today on my channel. So keep an eye out for that notification. If you can't catch it if you can't catch it live, catch it on the replay. Cece says Z News is listening to you on her other phone. Oh, that's so fun. There she is. Hold on. Let me see if I can hear you doing it this way.
Welcome back. Hello there, Susan. Chica. Lisa.
Love that.
How's it going, everyone?
Also, you guys, Allie is the person, if you caught my videos with the current Sea Organization member in Kansas City, it was Allie that brought that she went in and she recorded their conversation because she wanted to learn about Scientology and be able to refer back to it. But as Scientology does, they, basically totally turned her off and she turned a protester. So they had their chance. We now claim Allie as one of ours. So please go over, show some love, do that room raid. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you so much. And most of all, I hope you get out and have an amazing cult-free day.